Thank you, Matthew. So I'm Claire Aplin of Wahoo, and I provide graphic design and marketing services. And today I'm going to talk to you about graphic design and graphic designers and how to get the most out of your graphic designer. So first of all, a little bit about me. So my passion for graphic design started many years ago when I was about 7 years old in the Brownies. And I was runner-up in a design competition. I designed a dental badge. I wrote a little strap line and had to go to London from the Sticks in Hive to receive my reward. And now, all these decades later, I'm still doing the same thing. So I was obviously very passionate about it from when I was very young. I went to Southampton Institute where I got a degree in graphic design in 1994. My first job was, I was lucky enough to go to the Albert Hall with one of my lecturers to put up an exhibition. Then came crashing back down to earth because I had sold a bus map that I designed during my degree to Southampton City Bus, and they then took me on for the summer as a marketing assistant and graphic designer. I updated all their posters and went round to student fairs promoting the bus map. Then got a job with the University of Southampton in their media department, worked there for a couple of years, and then went on to a technology business called Broke Manor Research. Some of you may know it. Some of you may not, which is always astounds me because it's massive. There's 500 people work there in the Sticks in Romsey doing really high-end technology. So that's a little bit about me and my background. I then set up Wahoo back 10 years ago now. So I've been working for myself basically for 10 years, helping clients with graphics and marketing. So have you worked with a graphic designer before? Now, I know that some of you here will, so apologies if I'm telling you how to suck eggs. But I wanted to start from scratch because someone once said to me, I've never worked with a graphic designer before, and was obviously scared. And I thought, well, yeah, I suppose to me, it's second nature. I've been doing it since I was 7. But for some people, it may make them feel a bit like I feel when I'm talking to my accountant, a little bit scared, not really understanding anything, completely out of your comfort zone. So today I want to start from scratch. So to tell you what a graphic designer does and how they can help you and how you can get the most from them. So we work with images and text to fulfill a client brief. And that the brief is, I think, is what shapes a graphic designer. We're not artists. We're not here to express our emotions. We are here to be creative, but we're here to make the client's dreams come true and not our own. We're here to create material that the client is completely happy with. So what can a graphic designer do for you? Well, the obvious thing, which I'm sure you're all aware of, is logos. What I would suggest, if you haven't heard of brand guidelines, is if you get a logo commissioned, make sure you get brand guidelines with that. Now, back in the day when I first started doing graphic design, those guidelines, I remember when I worked for the university and had to do some work for the NHS, the guidelines were like a telephone directory, for those of you who remember telephone directories, absolutely massive. But they don't need to be massive. Brand guidelines could be a simple sheet of A4, as I've got here. So even the very smallest of businesses can make sure they maintain a really strong brand. Now, the trouble is if you don't have brand guidelines, people make things up. So brand guidelines will say the fonts that you use, and the fonts may be different on the computer as they are in print. It contains the colours that you use, because they, again, are different on computer and in print, and obviously any variations of your logo. And that means that when you need someone to do something for you, such as if you've got someone in your office and you say, I'd like you to just put something together quickly, hand them the brand guidelines. They don't have to decide what font to use. They don't have to make the colours up. It makes life easy for everyone. If you're using an external supplier to do some work for you, whether you want some freebies, promotional items, or you're getting a banner made up, if they've got your brand guidelines there, again, they don't have to make it up. It means that even the smallest micro business can have a really strong brand. So yeah, if you're getting a logo commissioned, ask brand guidelines as well, if you can possibly afford it, because it's definitely worth it to maintain a strong brand. So graphic design is the obvious thing as well is print. And obviously when I started work back in the day, it was all print, didn't really do anything digitally. So your obvious things are business cards and stationery, flyers, brochures and folders. And here we've got a piece of work that Sally commissioned me to do for her. Right up through to exhibition stands and billboards. Anything that's got to be printed, whether that's on normal paper or board or fabric even. Obviously, I need to stop saying obviously. I need to have a swear box for that. Right, so the next thing is digital. So website design, and that is not web development. We use people like Rob for web development. This is using a graphic designer to create a look and feel for your website. Some graphic designers will be more involved in this than others. And you need to make sure that you ask your graphic designer what they do, what areas they cover, because we all cover different sorts of things. They can do things like emailers and email signatures to liven up your emails. And again, they can do social media graphics. All those things that you may struggle with, a graphic designer, it's second nature. Other things that graphic designers can do, shop fronts and signage, band graphics, illustrations, infographics and maps, presentation materials and promotional giveaways and workwear. And again, ask your graphic designer what they specialise in. They might not be an illustrator. They might love doing maps. They might be an expert at presentation materials. And if they don't do these things, they probably know someone that can do them for you. And they'll also have plenty of suppliers. So if you need some freebies or promotional items, they will probably have suppliers that they can recommend, that they've got good jobs from before and are reputable. So it's always worth having a chat with them to find out who they know if you don't know anyone that can do it for you. So one of the problems is with graphic design, and why people might be scared of it, is there isn't a right answer. It's not like, say, getting your set of books where there's a definite number at the bottom. You need to be really careful when you're liaising with your graphic designer so that you get the right answer. So that's what we're going to concentrate on now. We're going to talk about briefs. These are what we don't want. We don't want big, fat, baggy briefs that are all loose and contain too much information and aren't clear. What we want are, you guessed it, nice tight briefs, but I'm not going to have a picture there because that will be wrong. So what do we need on a brief? Well, we need to know, what do you want? What have you thought about? Are you thinking of a flyer? And if so, why do you want it and what do you want to achieve? And a graphic designer might advise you on different things to do with that. They might know of situations that have worked, situations that haven't worked so well, and might be able to advise on the best way to do that. When do you need it? Deadlines are really important. Ideally, leave as long as possible. There are options for getting things printed, for example, really quickly these days, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way of doing things. Not only will you rush your graphic designer and rush your printer and not leave yourself any margin for error, but you also might end up paying more as well. So if you want to get best value for money and make sure you have the best design, leave as long a lead time as possible. And do you already have a brand? If you do, make sure that you share that with your graphic designer, give them all the files that you've been given. And on that note, when you do have your logo designed, make sure that you get all those files given to you, including what is called a vector file, which I will cover at the end if we've got time. And also think about what your budget is. Now, if you're dealing with a graphic designer for the first time, you might not want to divulge this. It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation. But have something in mind. Think about how much you're prepared to spend, because it is useful information. If once you've built up that trust relationship with your graphic designer or they've been recommended to you, tell them what you've got, because then they can work out the best job for you. So they can think about different types of paper that you might be able to use. Is it going to be some sort of budget material, or is it going to be something lovely and thick? Do you want some sort of foiling on it? If you want something grand, not only do you need to leave a longer deadline, but you also need to think of a bigger budget. So have that in your mind when you approach your graphic designer. Now, for a big brand or a big company, they will have certain corporate guidelines, and it's not up to individuals to say what they love and what they hate. But I generally think with a small business, you need to think really carefully about what you love and what you hate. Because there are rules within design, but rules are made to be broken. As an example, navy blue is traditionally a colour that is associated with professional services like solicitors or accountants. But just because you run solicitors or accountants doesn't mean you necessarily want your brand to be in navy blue. I know of one accountant over in Woolston. He wanted to break the mold. He didn't want to be like other accountants. He wanted to be much more casual, obviously very good at his job, but he wanted people to be able to pop in for a cup of coffee. So his brand is purple. He wanted to steer well clear of anything too traditional. And again, think about things. Do you prefer modern or traditional? Do you want to be light-hearted or serious? These are all things that you need to think about your brand, but also think about you. If it's your business or it's a very small business, you need to feel passionate about your brand. You need to believe in it, because if you believe in it, you will transfer that over to your customers. And do you have examples of things that you love? As a graphic designer, we need to try and get into people's heads. So if you can show us things that you particularly love or equally that you don't like, let us know, because that can help us work through and provide you with a design that you really love. And also have a look at the graphic designer's portfolio. Do you like what they do? If you don't, it might be the case that you need to find another one, and they might be able to recommend somewhere, because we all do things slightly differently. As I said, there is no exactly right answer or exactly wrong answer. So you need to love the end result. So the more you can answer the questions that we've been through, the more likely you are to get what you want. So the next thing, if there's going to be text within the document, have you written it all and checked it? And I've crossed out text here because we in the trade call it copy. So when you give your copy to the graphic designer, try and make it as near as, damn it, the final text, because any changes you make not only will take time and possibly cost you more money, but also it might mean the design is adapted every single time. The first time the graphic designer does it, they will be using all that text and slotting it all in like a jigsaw to make it all work really well. So the more you change that, the more it's likely to throw out the design. There are obviously amends, we all expect that, but just try and pin it down. Do you have any photographs to include, and are they suitable for print if you're getting things printed? So a photograph on screen can look fantastic. So if you're doing that for your website or an emailer or social media, that's absolutely fine. But if you want something to go in print, it needs to be big. Even for a small document, you need a really high quality, high resolution photograph. And if you're getting, say, a roller banner or an exhibition stand, those photographs need to be really high quality. So if you don't have photographs, your graphic designer can either have access to a stock library, that's your more economical option. But if you've got a sort of bigger budget, you could consider a photo shoot so that you get a suite of photographs specifically for your business. So they're all things to consider when you're thinking about your photographs. So what can you expect from your graphic designer? Well, once you've sort of decided on your brief and you've discussed a job with your graphic designers, you should receive a quote. And this should include information on things like how many revisions are included. So how many iterations, how many times could you go backwards and forwards with that design? They should also advise you on when payment's expected. For example, sometimes I know with web development and web design, it's expected that you might need to pay something up front, something in the middle, and something at the end. So make sure you know when that is. And then once you've agreed to the quote, the work can begin. So what to check when you receive that work from your graphic designer? Make sure the design is as you want it, and discuss this with your graphic designer if you need amends. Now, it's highly unlikely that that first design is going to be perfect. There's probably going to be things that you want to tweak. So go back to your graphic designer, discuss them with them. Don't be scared. That's the whole point. We've got very thick skins. We get trained at this when we do our degree. We have to put up our work on the wall and it all gets slated. So to develop that thick skin, and as I said, we're trying to fulfill the client brief, not making ourselves happy. So make sure it's as you want it, and then decide with your designer how that's going to operate. And as some of you know, when I'm working with clients, sometimes I share my screen so that we can work through designs together just to finish them off so people get exactly what they want. Then make sure once you're happy with the design, check it really thoroughly, including spelling, grammar, and any contact details. Now, personally, I'm a bit different from a lot of graphic designers because I do copy as well, and I will check designs thoroughly, but it is not the graphic designer's job to make sure that the content is correct. That is your job as the client. So please, please, please check everything. And if you know that you're not great at spelling or grammar, get someone you know who is. And if you don't know anyone, speak to your graphic designer, because they might know a proofreader that can help. And please check contact details, because that's something that is even more difficult to check, because the graphic designer won't necessarily know whether they're right or wrong. And once you're completely happy with it, sign it off, but only once you're completely happy, because once you sign on that dotted line, if it's going to print, you are then liable probably for the print costs. So we've got, looks like 4 minutes left, so I'm going to cover off some industry jargon for you. So first going to talk about bleed. If you've ever sent anything to an online printer, it might have talked about bleed, and bleed is the print that goes over the page, because when your flyer or your booklet is printed and trimmed, the trimming, if your print goes right up just to the edge of the paper, you might end up with a horrible white bit of paper on the end, and you don't want that. You want to put your bleed on. And then those black lines are your crop marks, so they are what the printer will use to cut the paper. We then move on to vector files, as I was talking about earlier. Now, apologies here, this isn't actually a vector file, but the whole point of a vector file is that it will blow up as big as it possibly can. You can have it on an exhibition stand, you can have it on a billboard, and it won't lose quality. So when you get your logo designed, make sure you're given a vector file. Now, you might not be able to open that file, but don't worry, because it's yours to keep. It's your artwork. Some designers might hold that back from you. Personally, I don't. I think it's, if you've paid for the work, it should be yours, because that's your original artwork, and that might be needed by certain suppliers, particularly if you say you suddenly decide you want a billboard, you need that vector file. Because if you don't have the vector file, you might be lumbered with this, the bitmap file, and a bitmap is a photograph. So your PNG files, your JPEGs, they're bitmaps, which are absolutely fine for certain purposes. They're absolutely fine for putting on your social media or on your website. They're not great for print or if you want to make them really big. So that is what a bitmap file is and why they look so ropey when they're blown up. Colours. So CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow and black. Don't ask me why K stands for black. Never actually found out why. But they are the 4 pots of ink that go onto a printing press. So they make up your full colour designs in print. Now, there are things called Pantone colours or special colours that you might have heard of, and they're special pots of ink that get added to the printing press if you've got a particular colour. That does get more expensive, so in my experience, most people don't tend to use Pantone colours these days. They stick with the cyan, magenta, yellow and black, the 4 colours. Now, RGB, red, green, blue, they're the colours that you use on your computer screen. So when I was talking about brand guidelines and I said about colours, these are why they're different. Red, green, blues on screen look lovely. In print, they'll look shocking. So you need to make sure that when something goes to print, it's CMYK and not RGB. And that's when problems arise. When you see something on screen, you think that looks fabulous. Well, if it goes to print, comes back, doesn't look quite so great. And that's where your graphic designer will help you out. Finally, any questions? So thank you very much for listening. Let me unshare my screen.
Great, thanks a lot, Claire, for covering all of that so clearly for us. But I'm sure there's some questions, and it's your chance now to ask all those questions that you've been scared to ask before. Claire's heard them all before, so please do go for it if you have anything you'd like to know.
I'll just ask a quick question while other people are thinking of answers that I'm sure they will find very useful. But Claire, I want you absolutely agree with you about brand guidelines, so valuable. How far into a brand guideline would you expect to go for the average small business? I mean, I've seen brand guidelines that had things like tone of voice and so forth in them, which just seemed like a bit of overkill maybe, but I don't know. What do you think?
Personally, I think it depends on budget. I work with a lot of really small businesses, and I just say, look, just please have the brand guidelines. It's not going to take me long to do, and then you'll have a nice strong brand. That said, if you're working for a bigger organisation and you want to make sure that that brand really is maintained across all sorts of things, then you do think about your tone of voice, any photographs you're going to be using, any spacing around your logos. So if you've got the budget there, go for it. But I don't honestly think that's necessary for a small business. I think, you know, the main thing is with graphic design to use your fonts and your colours, but if you want a really strong brand across everything, all your materials, yeah, ask your graphic designer to advise on the whole branding package.
Love your point about padding around logos. So it really makes me cringe when I see logos inserted into websites where they've used a tight cropped image and then sat it against a coloured background and the whole thing looks strangled.
Yes, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I see brand guidelines all the time when they've got you've got the line around the logo to say the spacing. And you do need space around it, but I suppose my issue is, the problem is, if you make brand guidelines too expensive, I know that people aren't going to use them. And but yes, I completely agree, Rob. If you're going to put your logo on something, give it loads of space. Don't squash it into places, and don't squash your stuff. Don't ignore space. Space is really important within design. Less is more.
Claire, just a quick question. So my Essence of Cake logo was done by a new graphic designer way back when. So I never got a vector file. Yeah, I know. I don't think she even knew what that was at the time, bless her. But is it possible to get one? Like, can you go backwards on it, or would I have to just get it redone by somebody else?
You would probably need to get it redone. You'd need to go back to your designer and say, could I have the vector file, please?
Okay.
And if they haven't got it, they should have had it, because that's how they should have designed it in the first place.
Right, okay.
And if they haven't got it, yeah, you would have to get it redrawn. That said, it doesn't normally take ages to get things like that redrawn.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's always good to try and get that in the first place.
Okay.
Depends on
Thank
the
you.
logo, doesn't it, Claire? I mean, a simple yet logo can be regenerated really quickly, can't it?
Yeah, it doesn't take long. I just always think it's a shame when people arrive at me and they haven't got that, because you're thinking
Yeah.
someone has done that for them. And I personally think that should be handed over to the client.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to give testimonial? Is that allowed?
Go for it. Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Is that okay? So we've asked Claire's done many graphics for us at NetServe, and always really, really easy to work with. Claire makes the whole process super easy. Not to put pressure on you, Claire, but really quick turnaround as well. It's always, you know, you're not hanging around. It's, you know, when you've got an idea in your head and you're really keen to get the graphics out and get it going, it's really good that Claire can turn that around. And yeah, the ideas that come through are great as well. So.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Appreciate the work as well. Thanks, Victoria. Anything else? Want to take the dark out of graphic design?
I'm going to comment on the flip side of the colour debate, because I quite often see CMYK logos put into websites where the colours are so leery that it looks crazy.
Oh dear.
People
Well,
need to
yeah,
understand
this is why you need experts to help, isn't it? To make sure you got the right colours.
I'm just going to say that's a really nice guide that you've given to, or walk through the world of graphic design and how to work with a graphic designer, because so many people don't know what they need to deliver from their side to let you do a good job.
Well, this is the thing. I wasn't aware of quite how scared people were until someone. I'm not saying everyone is.
They're trying to tell you.
But yeah, people that aren't creative, I feel scared of the process. As I say, it's completely alien to me. But then if I compare that to how I feel when I speak about accountancy, I thought, I know that feeling, that sort of sick feeling where you think, I'm out of my comfort zone here. I don't understand what's going on. I guess the trouble is you also know your industry jargon, and you know, you can get a little bit wrapped up where things are obvious to you, but not to everyone else. And I would say, if you know, talk to your graphic designer and ask them, work with them, you know, use them as a consultant. You don't have to go to them with everything finalised. They should be able to help you and guide you through the process to make your life easy.
I'd just like to say that when you did some work for us, the little booklet that you showed there, you really also kindly gave me a description, because I always get really confused when someone says send your logo and I just think, oh, which version? What am I sending? I don't know. But you gave us a really clear, like, this, you send this when they want this, exactly like you just said about the vector, exactly what you just said about JPEG and so on like that. And now I refer to it all the time because I'm, often have to send it somewhere. So yeah, it's just those little extra little bits of guidance. It's like you're sat on my shoulder going, not that one, then that one. So yeah, it really great service, and we really love our books. And despite the fact we've now moved and we're now putting a little sticker over our old address, we don't worry about that. We're nearly ready to come and get it all updated. But yeah, wouldn't recommend you enough. You're just brilliant. Yeah, great.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. And I'll remember that, because I might have to supply that to other people as well. I'll look back over my notes.
Yeah, it's just really handy because I'm a middle-aged woman and I've got a lot in my brain. I can't stuff much more in there, and so to have this guide is just, really good for me.
No, that's useful, because I know what I'm like when people talk to me about stuff that I don't understand, like finance, for example, and it goes in and then it goes out the other side again. So if it's written down, it makes it easier.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo, I think, what Rob was saying. That was a really clear presentation. The jargon busting, going through, what you would ask in a brief. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. And yeah, I'd probably like to talk to you separately about maybe doing this up in Southampton at the BICP, because they support a lot of startups. And I think, like you say, it's that scary kind of like, oh, I don't know what to say to the graphic designer. I don't know how much money it's going to be and things like that. So yeah, I might talk to you, follow up afterwards, because I think this would be a really useful presentation for startups.
Super, it'd be great to speak to you.
Yeah.
So at the other end, Claire, of life, not startup, but this obsession with rebranding, which drives me crazy. I've not rebranded any of my businesses in 15 and 10 years. Surely if you get the logo right and it's timeless and wonderful, as mine is, why this obsession with rebrand? Or is it just to keep marketing departments busy?
I don't agree with rebranding.
Yeah.
I think, if you get the right logo in the first place, you shouldn't have to rebrand.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's important. I'd ideally like to capture startup businesses and say, please pay someone to do your logo for you. Don't do it yourself. Start as you mean to go on. It might be worth spending a few more quid, but make sure you're really happy. And again, you love it and feel really passionate about it, because then you won't want to change it. And you shouldn't have to change it. If you look at the big brands like Apple, Coca-Cola, they might tweak them. They don't change every 5 minutes. I know a business that will remain nameless, and they routinely rebrand every 5 years, and I've no idea why. I don't get it. I think, why would you, unless there's some dodgy thing about their business that they're trying to cover up all the time, I don't know why you would redo it. You really want to strengthen that brand, don't you? And reinforce it wherever possible. So yeah, I'm completely with you, Matthew. I can understand if you've got a really dodgy logo that someone did back in the day and it wasn't very good, redo it. But ideally, start as you mean to go on with something really strong.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly NFBP ones, Rob, I think it's been the same for all 25 years, hasn't it?
In essence, it's been the same. Yeah, we've tweaked the colours from time to time, and we've added the community interest company strapline to it when we went independent.
Yeah.
But pretty
And
much
we've got
it's
brand
remained.
guidelines as well, which is very important. To use our dark blue because we're so professional.
The other thing is different formats of logo, because a big square logo may not work so well on the website header. You may want an oblong version of it. In fact, in your brand guideline example, you show different color combinations for a logo.
Yes, and also when you're getting your logo, think about where you're going to use it. Like, for example, now a lot of I'm finding a lot of the time I have to do maybe more than one version, because people need something that will fit within a circle for their social media. So they might need an icon of the logo. So that's worth thinking of as well when you're getting your logo. Do you need your name within that logo, or is it just going to be an icon? And if you are going to have your name, how will that work really small? So it might be the case that you have two separate versions. Like I say, you've got your icon and you've got your logo, and you might want a vertical version and a portrait version for different applications. Get them from day one and be clear on what you're going to use them for. So yeah, I didn't mention that in the presentation, but it's a good point, Rob, about thinking where you're going to apply your logo. I would also recommend that it should be able to work on black and white, in black and white, but also on black and on white. So you should be able to reverse it, ideally. I saw something the other day where the logo is on black, it's on a black box. And I just thought, oh, I'd really like to have seen that. So it was just it didn't need to be on a black box. Maybe that's just me.
No, it's not just you.
Excellent. So time's running out. Any last thoughts from anyone or questions while you've got Claire in the hot seat? No. Excellent. Well, Claire, thank you so much. And as I say, we'll put that up on the website.